Okay, real talk. Who hasn't at least once daydreamed about walking on an asteroid?
It's definitely got that classic sci-fi appeal to it.
It does, right? It seems so adventurous. But you know what we always forget in those daydreams?
What's that?
How insanely hard it would be to actually get a spacecraft out to an asteroid, fly around it, and then bring everything back home.
Yeah, Hollywood definitely makes it look way too easy.
Right, makes it look like a quick trip to the store. But the reality is, it pushes the limits of engineering and physics.
It really does. It's a delicate dance of so many different things that all have to work perfectly.
And that's exactly what we're going to try to unpack today.
Let's do it.
We've got a ton of research here all about the three biggest hurdles of asteroid missions:
Okay.
propulsion, navigation, and communication.
The big three.
Yep. And if even one of these goes wrong.
It's game over.
Exactly. Mission scrubbed. And what's crazy is how interconnected they all are.
That's right. They all depend on each other.
You can't really solve one without thinking about the others, too.
A weakness in one area can really cascade and cause problems throughout the entire mission.
Okay, so first up, propulsion.
Yeah.
A lot of people think it's just strap a giant rocket on and hit the gas, right?
It seems intuitive, but it's way more nuanced than that.
So it's not just about brute force.
Nope, it's about precision and planning.
Yeah.
Like, one of the biggest things is this idea of delta V.
Delta V.
Yeah, it basically means the total change in velocity you need to do a maneuver in space.
Oh, yeah.
Like reaching an asteroid, orbiting it, landing. All of those take very precise changes in speed and direction.
I see. So you don't just point at the asteroid and go,
Not quite. Think of it like trying to park a car on an icy hill.
I hate those.
Right. The tiniest tap on the gas or brake can send you sliding all over the place.
You're telling me. You're constantly overcorrecting.
Exactly. And asteroids are kind of similar.
Really?
Yeah, they have really weak gravity, which means even small bursts from your engine can have a big impact on your trajectory.
So it's more about finesse than just raw power.
100%. You need to be able to make tiny adjustments, like those little nudges on the icy hill.
Okay, that makes sense. So what kind of engines are we even using for these missions?
Well, we've got a couple options, each with pros and cons.
Lay it on me.
Okay, so the classic ones are chemical rockets.
Like the big fiery ones we see at launches?
Exactly. They give you a ton of thrust, but they guzzle fuel like crazy.
So not very fuel efficient.
Not really.
Yeah.
And that extra fuel adds weight, which means you need even more fuel to carry it. It's kind of a vicious cycle.
Yeah, I see the problem there. So what's the alternative?
Well, for longer missions, we're starting to use ion thrusters more and more.
Ion thrusters. Those sound kind of futuristic.
They are pretty cool. They use electricity to accelerate ions, creating thrust.
Okay.
They're way more fuel efficient than chemical rockets.
Gotcha.
But the trade-off is they produce much less thrust.
So it's like you're trading speed for efficiency.
Exactly. Think of it like this. A chemical rocket is like a sprinter. It bursts out of the gate with tons of power.
I'm getting the picture.
While an ion thruster is more like a marathon runner. Slow and steady, but it can go the distance.
Okay. I'm starting to see why we need both.
Right, it depends on the mission.
Makes sense.
And a great example of ion propulsion is the Dawn spacecraft.
Dawn.
Yeah, it visited two massive asteroids, Vesta and Ceres, all using ion propulsion.
Oh, 2 asteroids.
Yep. Showed the world that ion thrusters can be used for really complex missions.
That's pretty impressive.
It really is a testament to how powerful this technology can be.
But it does take a lot of patience, I guess.
You got it. You're not going to be setting any speed records, but you can travel much farther and do more science.
I can see the trade-off.
And there's even cooler stuff on the horizon, like nuclear thermal propulsion.
Nuclear.
Yep, it's still in development.
I bet.
But it basically uses nuclear reactions to heat up a propellant, which creates way more thrust than ion engines.
So basically, a nuclear-powered rocket, that's got to be fast.
Super fast. Could potentially cut travel times to distant asteroids by, like, a lot.
Now that's what I'm talking about. But hold on, even if we get there super fast, how do we actually navigate around an asteroid once we arrive?
That's the million-dollar question, and it takes us straight into the next challenge: navigation in deep space.
Right, because it's not like they've got street signs and GPS out there.
Exactly, and it's way more complicated than just pointing your spacecraft in the right direction and hitting the gas.
Okay, so break it down for me. What makes navigation around an asteroid so tricky?
Well, first of all, you're millions of kilometers away from Earth, which means...
Hang on, before you go any further, we've got to talk about those crazy communication delays, right?
Right, I was just getting to that.
Because, like, how long does it actually take to get a signal to an asteroid and back?
Well, imagine this. You send a command to a probe near the asteroid belt.
Okay.
It takes about 40 minutes for that signal to get there.
Wow, 40 minutes just for a one-way message.
Yep, and then another 40 minutes for the probe to send a response back.
So you're telling me if you send a command, you're waiting almost an hour and a half to see if it worked.
That's the reality of deep space communication. Forget real-time control. It's just not possible.
Whoa. Okay, yeah, that changes things.
Big time. So back to navigation.
Right, sorry. Sidetracked by the mind-blowing time delay.
No worries, it's a lot to take in.
Yeah.
But yeah, because of that delay, these probes can't be relying on constant instructions from Earth.
Got it.
They need to be able to make decisions on their own, almost like little robots with a mind of their own.
Okay, that makes sense. But still, how do they actually do that? I mean, asteroids are, what, just big lumps of rock, right?
They are, but they could be incredibly unpredictable. Take Bennu, for example.
Bennu. Oh, right. That was the target of the OSIRIS-REx mission.
Yep, well, that brought back those awesome asteroid samples.
I remember seeing those pictures. Wasn't Bennu kind of a weird shape?
It was. Way more rugged and boulder-strewn than anyone expected.
Yeah.
It made choosing a safe landing spot super tricky.
Like, how do you even map something that's constantly tumbling and looks like, I don't know, a giant space potato?
That's a great analogy. It really was like landing on a cosmic potato. But that's where the ingenuity comes in.
Okay, so spill the beans, how'd they do it?
Well, these probes are packed with all kinds of high-tech sensors.
Like what?
Stuff like LiDAR, cameras, star trackers.
So LiDAR, that's a new one.
Yeah, it's like radar, but it uses lasers instead of radio waves.
Fancy. What does it do?
It lets the spacecraft build incredibly detailed 3D maps of the asteroid surface, even in low light.
So it's like they're constantly building their own GPS system as they go.
You got it. And they use those maps to figure out where it's safe to land, where to take samples, all that stuff.
That's pretty wild. So it's not just about the hardware, it's about processing all that data in real time too.
You nailed it. And they even have to account for stuff like dust particles, which can be dangerous at high speeds.
Right, because everything's moving super fast out there.
Exactly. So even tiny things can cause damage if you hit them.
So it's like a constant game of cosmic dodgeball.
Pretty much. And to deal with all that, we're starting to use more and more AI in these probes.
Artificial intelligence in space.
Oh yeah, it's becoming crucial. They're basically teaching the spacecraft to learn from its surroundings and make decisions on the fly without waiting for us back on Earth.
So it's like these probes are getting smarter and more independent all the time.
That's the trend. We're basically sending out little robotic explorers that can think for themselves.
That's both amazing and kind of terrifying at the same time.
I know, right? But hey, that's the future of space exploration.
It definitely seems that way. But hold on, getting to an asteroid and figuring out how to fly around it is only half the battle, right?
You're right. We also need to figure out how to actually talk to these things.
Yeah, good point. It's easy to forget about communication when we're talking about missions millions of kilometers away.
It is. But think about it. How do we stay in touch with a spacecraft that's further away than anything humans have ever been?
Okay, now you've got me curious. What are the big hurdles with communication at those kinds of distances?
Well, first of all, just the sheer distance is a problem. The signal gets weaker and weaker the further it travels.
Right, makes sense. So it's like trying to whisper to someone across a football field.
More like across the entire solar system.
Wow, okay, yeah, that's a little different.
And it's not just the distance. There's also all kinds of interference out there.
Interference? Like what?
Things like solar flares, cosmic radiation, even the spacecraft's own orientation can mess with the signal.
So it's not as simple as just picking up the phone and dialing an asteroid.
Definitely not. It takes a lot of power and some incredibly sensitive equipment to pick up those faint signals.
Okay, I'm starting to see the challenge here. So what kind of tech are we using to make this cosmic conversation happen?
Well, one of our most important tools is the Deep Space Network.
The Deep Space Network?
Yeah, it's a network of giant antenna dishes spread out across the globe.
Giant antennas? Like, how giant are we talking?
We're talking, like, bigger than a house giant.
Whoa, seriously?
Seriously. And they're constantly listening for those faint whispers from spacecraft billions of kilometers away.
That's pretty mind-blowing. So it's like they're the ears of Earth, listening to the whispers of the cosmos.
That's a great way to put it. And because they're spread out around the world, there's always at least one antenna pointed in the right direction.
That's smart. Make sure we don't miss anything important.
Exactly. But even with these giant antennas, we still have to deal with that 40-minute round-trip delay.
Right. So even with the best tech, we're still stuck waiting almost an hour for a reply.
Pretty much. Which means we can't be constantly sending commands to the spacecraft. It needs to be able to do a lot on its own.
So it's not just about sending instructions, it's about giving the spacecraft the ability to think for itself.
You got it.
Yeah.
It needs to collect data, analyze it, and even make decisions based on what it finds, all without waiting for us to chime in.
That's incredible. It's like we're sending out little robotic scientists into space.
That's a great way to think about it. And as we aim for even bolder missions further out into the solar system, that need for onboard smarts is only going to grow.
You mean like missions to Uranus, Neptune, those sorts of places?
Yep, exactly. Or even interstellar missions someday. Those distances are so vast that real-time communication becomes practically impossible.
Okay, yeah, I can see how that would be a problem. But before we go full on sci-fi, let's stick with the tech we're using right now. Are there any ways to improve communication, even with that pesky speed of light limitation?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
One really exciting area is laser communication.
Lasers, like in Star Wars.
Kinda, except this is real. Laser signals can carry way more data than radio waves.
So it's like upgrading from dial-up to broadband, but for space.
That's a perfect analogy. It means we can send and receive more information faster.
So more bandwidth for our cosmic conversations.
You got it. We could operate more complex instruments, download larger data sets, all sorts of cool stuff.
That would be a game changer. But would lasers help with that 40-minute delay issue? Or are we just stuck with that?
Sadly, even lasers can't break the cosmic speed limit. The delay is just a fundamental fact of the universe.
Bummer. Guess we can't cheat physics, even with lasers.
Nope, not yet at least. But hey, at least we can pack more information into each transmission.
True, that's a big win. Okay, so we've got the distance, we've got the interference, we've got the speed of light working against us. Any other challenges with communication we should be aware of?
One big one is power. All these communication systems, whether radio or laser-based, they need energy to run.
Makes sense.
And in space, energy is a precious commodity.
Right, no convenient power outlets floating around out there.
Exactly. Spacecraft have to rely on limited power sources like solar panels or RTGs,
RTGs.
radioisotope thermoelectric generators.
Yeah.
Basically, they use the heat from decaying radioactive material to generate electricity.
Okay, so it's like a tiny nuclear power plant on the spacecraft.
Kind of, yeah. But the point is, every watt you use for communication is a watt you can't use for something else.
Right, like science instruments or maneuvering the spacecraft.
Exactly. So it's all about balance, trying to make the most of every bit of energy you've got.
It's fascinating to see how all these things are connected. Propulsion, navigation, communication. It's like a delicate ecosystem where everything depends on everything else.
It really is. And that's what makes these missions so amazing. They really highlight the incredible ingenuity of the people who make them happen.
Well, you've certainly given us a lot to think about. It's incredible to see how these seemingly separate challenges are all so intricately connected. But we're just getting started.
Yes, there's so much more to explore. Let's delve deeper into the specifics of these challenges and see how they influence the future of asteroid exploration.
Perfect.
Let's jump right back in. Where were we? Ah, yes, propulsion. We were talking about ion thrusters and the Dawn mission.
Yeah, that was fascinating. To think we can visit multiple asteroids with this technology, it's mind-blowing. But you also mentioned something about nuclear thermal propulsion. Now, that really piqued my curiosity.
I figured it would. It's definitely one of the more exciting areas of research right now. Imagine reaching the asteroid belt in a fraction of the time it currently takes.
That would be incredible. So how does this nuclear thermal propulsion actually work? Is it safe? And what are the challenges in developing it?
Those are all great questions, and that's exactly what we're going to dive into next. First, let's talk about how it works, basically.
Okay, so we've talked about how tough it is to even get to an asteroid and fly around it.
It's definitely not a walk in the park, that's for sure.
But I gotta ask, why bother? Like, what's the big payoff for all this effort? What are we really trying to achieve with these asteroid missions?
Well, the simple answer is asteroids hold a lot of secrets, and those secrets could be valuable in a bunch of ways.
Okay, give me the rundown.
All right, so there are three main reasons why we're so interested in these space rocks: science, resources, and planetary defense.
Okay, those sound pretty important. Let's start with the science angle. What kind of scientific knowledge can we gain from studying asteroids?
Oh, tons of stuff. Asteroids are like time capsules from the very beginning of our solar system.
Really? That's kind of cool.
Yeah, they formed billions of years ago alongside the planets, and they haven't changed much since then.
So they're like pristine remnants of the early solar system.
Exactly. And by studying their composition, we can learn a lot about the conditions that existed back then, like what the early solar system was made of, how planets formed, all that good stuff.
Wow, so we're essentially using asteroids to look back in time and understand our own origins.
You got it. It's like cosmic archaeology. And it's not just about the past either. Asteroids could also hold clues to the future of humanity in space.
That's where the resources part comes in, right? I've heard a lot about asteroid mining lately.
Yep, that's a big one. Some asteroids are packed with valuable minerals, things like platinum, gold, iron, even water ice.
So we're talking about actually mining asteroids for resources we can use here on Earth.
That's the idea. And those resources could also be used to support space exploration itself.
Like how so?
Well, imagine if we could mine water ice from asteroids and break it down into hydrogen and oxygen.
Right, the stuff we need for air and water.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But those elements are also the main ingredients for rocket fuel.
Ooh, so we could have like refueling stations in space using asteroid resources.
Precisely. We could travel much further and stay out there for longer without having to haul all our fuel from Earth.
That would be a game changer. But before we get too carried away with dreams of asteroid mining and space gas stations, we got to talk about that third reason you mentioned, planetary defense.
Right, that's the big what-if scenario that we got to be prepared for.
Okay, so what are we defending against exactly?
Well, most asteroids aren't a threat, but there are some that have orbits that bring them uncomfortably close to Earth.
So like a potential asteroid impact, like in the movies.
Yep, that's the one. And even a relatively small asteroid could cause serious damage if it hit Earth.
Okay, now I'm a little freaked out. But honestly, isn't that like a super rare event?
It is, thankfully. The odds of a major impact in our lifetime are pretty low, but it's a risk we can't just ignore.
I see your point. So what are we doing to protect ourselves?
Well, missions like DART are a big step in the right direction.
DART. Remind me what that was.
It stood for Double Asteroid Redirection Test. Basically, NASA smashed a spacecraft into an asteroid to see if they could nudge it off course.
Wait, seriously, they just crashed a spacecraft on purpose?
Yep. And it worked. They managed to slightly change the asteroid's trajectory.
Whoa, that's amazing. So we're actually capable of deflecting an asteroid.
It seems that way. Of course, there's still a lot more work to be done.
Right, we're not going to be shooting lasers at space rocks just yet.
Not quite. But DART was a huge proof of concept. It showed that planetary defense is actually possible.
Okay, that's good to know. So circling back to all those challenges we've been talking about, it sounds like overcoming them isn't just about exploring asteroids for the sake of it.
Right. It's about pushing the boundaries of what's possible in space, finding resources to sustain our future out there, and even protecting our planet from potential threats.
That's a pretty compelling trifecta of reasons to keep pushing forward.
Exactly. It's not just about satisfying our curiosity. It's about securing our future as a species, both on Earth and beyond.
I like the way you think. Okay, so given all these hurdles we've discussed, what would make the biggest difference in actually tackling these challenges? What should we be keeping an eye on in the future?
That's a great question. Well, for starters, on the propulsion front, keep an eye on nuclear thermal propulsion.
Right, the super fast nuclear rocket you mentioned.
Yep. If we can make that work safely and reliably, it would be a total game changer for reaching distant destinations.
Yeah, suddenly missions to the outer solar system wouldn't seem so daunting.
Exactly. And when it comes to navigation, AI and autonomous systems are key.
Right, making those spacecraft even smarter.
Yep. The more decisions they can make on their own, the less we have to worry about those communication delays.
Which, as we've established, are a major pain.
A major pain indeed. And for communication itself, laser communication is the one to watch.
The cosmic broadband upgrade.
Exactly. More bandwidth means more science, more data, more knowledge about those distant worlds.
So it's not just about building better spacecraft, it's about making them more independent and giving them the tools to talk to us more effectively.
That's the key. We're not just sending robots out there. We're sending out explorers, scientists, emissaries of humanity, if you will.
That's a pretty poetic way to put it.
Well, it's true. It's all about pushing the boundaries of what we know and what we can achieve.
It's definitely an exciting time to be following space exploration, that's for sure.
Absolutely. And it's not just about the robots and the tech. It's about the people behind it all, the engineers, the scientists, the dreamers who make it all possible.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So, for our listener out there who's hopefully just as amazed by all this as we are, what's the one thing you'd want them to remember from our conversation today?
That's a good one. I think the next time you see a picture of an asteroid, or read about a new discovery, don't just see a rock in space.
Okay.
See a stepping stone. Every mission, every challenge we overcome brings us one step closer to a future where humanity is truly a spacefaring civilization.
Where we can mine asteroids, unravel the secrets of the universe, and maybe even ensure our survival as a species.
Exactly. It's a bold vision, but it's one that's within our reach if we keep pushing the boundaries.
Well, that's a pretty inspiring thought to end on. And who knows, maybe one day some of our listeners will be the ones making those breakthroughs, pushing those boundaries, and shaping that future.
I wouldn't be surprised at all. The next generation of space explorers is out there somewhere, just waiting for their chance to make history.
That's a pretty amazing thought. Okay, so we talked about the challenges, the motivations, the potential payoffs. What else is there to uncover about these asteroid missions? What haven't we touched on yet?
Well, one thing we haven't really delved into is the interconnected nature of these challenges, how solving one problem can lead to solutions in other areas. And that's what I find so fascinating about this whole field. It's like a giant puzzle where every piece is connected.
Okay, yeah, I see what you mean. Like we talked about earlier, advancements in propulsion could reduce travel time, which would in turn lessen the impact of those communication delays. It's all connected.
Exactly. And if a spacecraft can navigate more autonomously, it wouldn't need to constantly communicate with Earth for instructions.
So that frees up bandwidth for transmitting scientific data or performing other tasks.
Precisely. It's like a chain reaction of innovation. And this interconnectedness extends beyond the technical aspects. Think about asteroid mining, for instance. It's not just about extracting resources, it's about creating a sustainable infrastructure for space exploration.
Oh, I see what you mean. We could build fuel depots, habitats, even manufacturing facilities in space using asteroid materials.
Exactly. We could eventually have a self-sustaining space economy, one that's not entirely reliant on Earth. But it all hinges on solving those core challenges. Propulsion, navigation, communication. They're the foundation upon which we'll build our future in space.
It's incredible to think about. It's like we're on the cusp of a new era of space exploration, one where we're not just visiting these celestial bodies, but actually utilizing them to expand our presence in the cosmos.
It's a truly exciting time to be alive, especially for anyone interested in space. The possibilities are endless, and the discoveries we make in the coming years will undoubtedly shape the future of humanity.
Yeah, it's amazing to think how far we've come, but it does feel like we're just getting started.
Oh, absolutely. We're just scratching the surface. And what's really fascinating is how all these challenges, they're not isolated. They're all connected.
You mean like how advancements in one area can lead to breakthroughs in others?
Exactly. It's like a cosmic puzzle. You solve one piece and it gives you clues for the next one.
Like we were saying before, if we can improve propulsion and cut down travel times, those communication delays become less of a headache.
Exactly. And if we can make spacecraft smarter so they can navigate and make decisions on their own, we don't need to be chatting with them constantly.
Which frees up bandwidth for all that juicy scientific data.
Precisely. It's a beautiful chain reaction of innovation.
I love that, a chain reaction.
hmm
It shows how everything's connected, even across millions of kilometers of space.
It really does. And it's not just the tech either. Think about something like asteroid mining.
Okay.
It's not just about grabbing resources, it's about building a whole new way of doing things in space.
Like a self-sustaining space economy.
Exactly. We could build fuel depots, habitats, even factories,
Yeah.
all using materials we find out there.
So we're not just visiting space, we're setting up shop.
That's the goal, long term. But to get there, we got to nail those basics. Propulsion, navigation, communication.
They're the foundation for everything else.
You got it. It's like building a house. Can't have those fancy rooms without a solid foundation.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so for our listener, who's hopefully as mind-blown by this as we are, what's the one thing you want them to walk away with? What's the big aha moment?
Well, next time you see a news story about an asteroid mission, a cool picture or a new discovery, don't just see the result.
Okay.
Take a second to think about everything that went into it.
All the challenges, the technology, the teamwork.
Exactly. Picture that little spacecraft, millions of kilometers away, doing its thing all on its own.
Navigating a chaotic environment, gathering data, sending those whispers of information back to us.
That's the real marvel of it all. It's a symphony of human ingenuity and engineering, all working together to push the boundaries of what we thought was possible.
Beautifully put. It's a reminder that space exploration isn't just about rockets and robots, it's about us, about our curiosity, our drive to explore, our desire to understand the universe.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
It's about pushing beyond what we know, reaching for the unknown, and maybe even ensuring our future as a species.
And on that note of cosmic wonder and the boundless potential of humanity, I think we'll wrap up our deep dive for today.
Sounds good to me.
A huge thank you to our expert for guiding us through this incredible world of asteroid missions.
It's been my pleasure.
And to our listener, thanks for joining us on this journey.
We'll catch you next time.
Keep looking up and never stop exploring.